It was a Thursday morning. One of those cold, quiet ones where the sky's just a dull sheet of gray and everything feels like it's moving in slow motion. I left the house a little earlier than usual. Lauren was still upstairs when I grabbed my keys. She'd gotten into the habit of sleeping in lately, even though she always used to be the one waking me up. Said she hadn't been sleeping well. Said she was stressed. Said a lot of things, come to think of it. Anyway, I didn't want to eat another vending machine breakfast at work, so I took a small detour. There's a little cafe tucked between a dry cleaner and a florist on Pine and 7th. One of those locals-only spots that's easy to miss unless you're looking for it. Funny thing is, Lauren had mentioned that place before. Twice, maybe 3 times. Said the lattes were amazing and that we should try it one day. We never did. I figured I'd give it a sh*T. I pulled into a metered spot and walked in, expecting the usual. People in scrubs, students with laptops, maybe someone reading a dog-eared paperback at a window seat. And it was that, mostly. But in the far corner, against the wall, I saw something that stopped me cold. Lauren, my wife, sitting across from a man I'd never seen before. They weren't just sitting, they were leaned in close. Close enough that the table between them looked like a formality. She was smiling, not the usual polite smile she gave neighbors or coworkers. No, this one was soft, warm, familiar in a way that used to be mine. The guy? Mid-30s, good-looking in a safe, clean-cut kind of way. Blue button-up shirt, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled like it had been messed up on purpose. He wasn't talking with his hands, but one of them was resting lightly on her wrist, like he belonged there, like they had a rhythm. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds before I realized what I was doing. I must have looked ridiculous, frozen by the door with my wallet half out. The barista asked if I was ready to order, but my throat had dried up. I just mumbled, "Sorry, I'll come back," and stepped outside. The moment the door shut behind me, my hands started shaking. I didn't know what to do. Walk back in and confront her? Take a picture? Call her right then? None of it made sense. None of it felt real. So I walked. Around the block. Then another. Then I sat in my car for a full 15 minutes before driving to work, late and completely unable to focus. That afternoon, around 11:30, she called. Her voice was casual, a little too upbeat. "You won't believe who I ran into this morning," she said, like it was the punchline to some sitcom plot. "Remember Josh? From college? The guy who used to play guitar at open mic nights? I stopped at that cafe I told you about and he was there. Total coincidence." I didn't say anything for a second. Then she added, "He's going through a rough time. Apparently his wife left him last month. He just started talking and, I don't know, he kind of broke down. I stayed with him for a bit. I didn't want to bother you with it, but I thought you'd understand." Her voice was a little too fast, a little too polished, like she'd practiced the whole thing in front of a mirror before dialing. I said, "Yeah, sure." She paused, maybe expecting me to ask more, maybe waiting to see if I knew. But I didn't. Not yet. I let her hang up thinking it was fine. Normal. Just a weird moment. But it wasn't. And something in me knew that. The rest of my day was a blur. Not because I was busy, but because my brain wouldn't stop playing detective. That scene in the cafe wouldn't leave me. The way she leaned in. The way her phone was face down on the table. She never leaves it like that, not even at home. The way the guy's hand wasn't just on the table, it was on her. I went through the motions at work. Sent a few emails. Sat through a meeting I couldn't remember 5 minutes after it ended. All I could think about was her laugh. It used to be something I loved. And now it felt like a red flag. I started questioning myself, was I overreacting? Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe they were just old friends catching up. Maybe she just forgot to mention she'd see him. Maybe I was being jealous, paranoid, possessive. But that's the thing about paranoia, it feels ridiculous until it's not. By the time I got home that evening, she was already there. Dinner was half prepped on the stove, and music was playing low from her phone speaker. She looked up when I came in and gave me the smile, the same one she wore in that cafe. Easy, relaxed, the kind of smile you give when you think everything is under control. "Hey babe," she said. "I started dinner. Hope you're hungry." I kissed her cheek. Felt cold. We ate like normal. Talked about nothing. Her coworker got a promotion. She needed new running shoes. She asked if I could pick up dry cleaning tomorrow. Nothing about Josh. Not again. She didn't bring it up, and neither did I. But later that night, I noticed her phone buzz twice. She picked it up quickly, glanced at it, and flipped it face down again. Old habit? Maybe. But now I was watching. Not because I wanted to, but because something had changed. I lay in bed next to her that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment in the cafe over and over. Every detail, every laugh, every carefully chosen word during her call. And something told me it wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't just running into an old friend. She called it a coincidence. But I've always believed in patterns. And this one didn't feel random. Felt practiced. That's when I started to notice. Not just that morning, but everything that came before it and everything that followed. But those would come later. In that moment, I just lay there beside her, listening to her breathing slow into sleep. I remember wondering, did she feel guilt? Did she feel anything at all? Or was this just the beginning of the story she thought she could write without me noticing? You don't see it all at once. That's the thing people never talk about. Cheating, the kind that really messes with your head, doesn't explode into your life. It leaks in, quietly. It disguises itself as stress, as coincidence, as miscommunication. It shows up dressed like bad timing. You second-guess yourself so many times you start to feel guilty for even noticing. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And for me, that morning at the cafe flipped a switch I didn't even know I had. I didn't confront Lauren. Not then. Not even later that week. What I did was watch, quietly, carefully, as the version of her I thought I knew started to fray at the edges. And once I started collecting the pieces, the full picture became impossible to ignore. Started small. She began locking her laptop. Now, that might sound stupid, normal even, except we'd never had secrets like that before. We shared everything. Calendars, streaming passwords, grocery apps. I used to joke that if either of us got hacked, we'd both go down together. But one morning, I walked by the kitchen and caught a glimpse of her screen just as she shut it. Fast. Too fast. And when I asked what she was working on, she said it was a work presentation. Then she changed the subject. A few days later, I went to use her laptop to look up a recipe. Something I'd done dozens of times, and it was password protected. I didn't ask. I just walked away. That night, she brought home her favorite wine. A sweet red she always called her decompressed drink, and poured 2 glasses like nothing had changed. But things had changed. The next clue came a week later. I was scrolling through Instagram while waiting in line at the pharmacy, and a new story popped up. One of Lauren's friends, not someone she was particularly close with, but close enough that they tagged each other, had posted a picture of them in a car, laughing. Lauren was in the front seat, wearing her big sunglasses and that off-the-shoulder sweater she only wore when she wanted attention. But it wasn't her that caught my eye. It was the man behind the wheel. His face wasn't visible, not completely, just a silhouette. But his build, the shape of his neck, the faint line of facial hair, it looked exactly like the man from the cafe. I saved the story before it disappeared. That evening, while we were sitting on the couch watching some forgettable Netflix show, I turned to her casually and asked, "Hey, who was driving you and Claire around today?" She didn't flinch, I'll give her that. She barely looked up. "Oh," she said, reaching for her wine glass. "Her driver. Her driver." I repeated. Yeah, she booked one of those luxury car services through her company. They'd just wrapped some conference thing, and she had expense credit to use. She said it like it was nothing, like the man behind the wheel was invisible. And for a moment, I almost let it go. Almost. But then I remembered something. Claire had tagged Lauren in that post, and the caption was just 3 emojis. A wine glass, a flame, and a smirking face. Subtle but loud if you're already listening. I started noticing other shifts. Lauren used to call me on her way home from work. Not always, but enough that it was routine. Little updates, little nothings. I saw the funniest billboard today. Or, I'm grabbing sushi, want anything? Those calls stopped. When I brought it up, she said she'd just been tired. I zone out with music now, she told me. It helps me decompress. That word again, decompress. It became her catch-all excuse for everything. Late work nights? Needed to decompress. Going out on a random Tuesday? Needed to decompress. Coming home tipsy from client drinks at 11 p.m. with zero warning? God, Cullen, I just needed to breathe. Don't make it a thing. And I wasn't. Not at first. I was making observations, sure. Mental notes. But I wasn't accusing her. I wasn't starting fights. I was really trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. But the problem with doubt is that once you let it in, it doesn't stop at the door. It spreads. Her smile changed. That was the hardest thing to explain. Lauren has one of those smiles that used to light up a room. It used to light me up. But lately, when she looked at me, it felt like the light had been unplugged. Her eyes were there. Her lips curved the same way. But the warmth was gone. Like she was playing the part, not feeling the moment. And when I tried to bring it up gently, she bristled. Said I was imagining things. That maybe I was projecting because I'd been distant. That was rich. I asked what she meant, and she said, I don't know, Cullen, you just seem paranoid lately. Like everything I do is under a microscope. I nearly laughed. The irony was too much. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, okay. I let her think she was in control. But every night, I added more to the growing list in my head. The next thing? Her perfume. Lauren has always worn the same fragrance. Something warm and a little citrusy, like orange peel and vanilla. I used to love how our sheets would smell like her. It was comforting. But one morning, I hugged her before work, and the scent was different, sharper, muskier, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. When I asked if she was trying something new, she shrugged and said she'd run out of the old one. This was a sample from a friend, she said, already halfway out the door. But that sample stuck around for weeks. And the weirdest part? She never let me touch her laundry after that. Not even once. I've got it, she'd say, snatching it up before I could help. We'd always done chores together. A system, a routine. But now I wasn't just being pushed out, I was being shut out. It was like living with someone who was still there, physically, but had already moved out emotionally. And the more I noticed, the more it ate at me. I started waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, convinced that I'd heard her whispering downstairs. Sometimes I'd find her on the patio, phone in hand, screen dimmed. She'd say she couldn't sleep. Neither could I. Eventually, I stopped sleeping altogether. Just stared at the ceiling, wondering when the hell I'd become this guy, the husband who watches his wife like a stranger in his own home. One night, I asked directly, sat across from her at dinner and said, is there something going on? She blinked. What do you mean? You've been different, I said, keeping my tone even. Distant. She sighed, rolled her eyes. So now I can't be tired without you thinking I'm cheating on you? That wasn't what I'd said. But it was exactly what she heard. I told her I just wanted us to be okay. That I missed her. That something felt off. And you know what she said? Maybe you need to talk to someone about this jealousy stuff. It's starting to affect how you look at everything. She called it jealousy. Like I was the problem. Like concern had somehow become a character flaw. That's when I realized she wasn't just hiding something. She was rewriting the story, framing me as the unstable one, the insecure husband, the needy partner, gaslighting me so cleanly I almost thanked her for it. That was the night I stopped asking, because asking wasn't going to give me answers. Watching would. The next morning, I set a folder aside in my work desk. Empty at the time, just a manila pocket labeled, unconfirmed. But I already knew. Deep down, I think I knew the moment I saw her in that cafe, laughing with him like he was home. The only thing I didn't know yet was how far she'd already gone, and what kind of man I was going to have to become just to get the truth. The thing about truth is that it doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it lets you believe you still have time. And sometimes it shows up when you least expect it, without mercy, without warning, and without giving you the chance to pretend anymore. That night, I wasn't supposed to come home early. I'd left the house that morning with my flash drive still plugged into my work laptop. I didn't realize it until almost midnight, when I reached into my bag to finish up a report and felt nothing. I remember sitting there in my office chair, staring at the empty pocket, debating whether it was even worth going back. I could have waited until morning, could have sent an email explaining the delay, could have avoided everything. Instead, I grabbed my coat. The drive home felt strangely calm. No music, no radio, just the hum of the engine and that quiet pressure in my chest I'd learned to live with over the past few weeks. I parked down the street, not wanting the headlights to cut through the house. I don't know why I did that. Instinct, maybe, or some part of me already knowing I didn't want to be seen. The house was dark when I opened the front door. No TV glow, no music, just silence. I kicked off my shoes and stepped inside, already rehearsing the casual explanation I'd give Lauren when she asked why I was back so late. Then I saw the light. It was coming from the living room. Soft, warm, flickering. Candles. My body went cold before my brain caught up. I moved slowly, every step deliberate, like sound itself had weight. And then I turned the corner. Lauren was there, straddling him. The same man from the cafe. The same silhouette from the car. His shirt was off, draped over the arm of the couch. Her hands were on his shoulders. His were on her waist like they belonged there. 2 wine glasses sat on the table, half empty. The room smelled like wax and something sweet and familiar. Her laugh cut through me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was soft. Mate. The kind of laugh you give when you feel safe. When she saw me, everything froze. She jumped back like she'd been burned, scrambling off him, pulling her sweater down, knocking a candle over in the process. Wax spilled onto the table, but she didn't notice. She just stared at me, eyes wide, mouth already forming words. Cullen, this isn't. I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions. I just looked at her. That seemed to confuse her more than anger would have. She started talking anyway, about emotions, about confusion, about how things had gotten complicated, about how she hadn't meant for this to happen, about how she loved me but didn't know how to explain what she was feeling. I didn't hear most of it. All I could see was how comfortable she'd been before I walked in, how unafraid, how at home. The man reached for his shirt, suddenly aware of me, suddenly smaller. He muttered something, an apology maybe, but I wasn't listening to him either. I turned around and walked out. She followed me to the door, barefoot, crying, saying my name like it still belonged to her. I didn't stop. I didn't respond. I got in my car and drove until the streets stopped making sense. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. By morning, everything was clear. Her things were already half-packed when I came back. Clothes missing from the closet. Jewelry gone from the dresser. She must have worked fast. Efficient. Like she'd practiced this too. I didn't confront her again. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I opened the folder I'd been building, the one that started empty. It wasn't empty anymore. Screensh *TS. Dates. Times. Notes I'd written to myself so I wouldn't forget what I'd seen, what I'd felt. And at the very bottom, the document she'd laughed about years ago when we signed it. The infidelity clause. She joked then, smiling as she signed. If it makes you feel better. It did. Just not in the way she'd imagined. People expect explosions after betrayal. Shouting. Broken plates. Slammed doors. They imagine anger because it's easier to understand than quiet. Silence makes people uncomfortable. Silence forces reflection. And silence, I learned, can be far more destructive than rage ever could be. I didn't expose Lauren. Not immediately. I didn't call her parents or our friends. I didn't post anything. I didn't even tell my coworkers why I suddenly stopped wearing my wedding ring. I let the truth sit exactly where it belonged between us and waited. When she came back 2 days later to talk, I let her in. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just diminished. No makeup. Hair tied back like she hadn't bothered trying. She carried herself like someone bracing for impact. She started apologizing before she even sat down. I didn't stop her. She talked about mistakes, about being lost, about how it wasn't supposed to happen like this. She cried. Real tears this time, not the controlled kind she'd perfected. She said my name over and over, like repetition could undo damage. When she finally ran out of words, I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out a single document. I placed it on the table between us. Not aggressively, just flat, calm. The marriage contract. Her eyes dropped to it instinctively. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by confusion, then fear. You remember this? I asked. She nodded slowly. The infidelity clause, I continued. The one you laughed about. The one you said was unnecessary but signed anyway. Her mouth opened, then closed. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to inform you. I told her I'd already spoken to my attorney, that everything was being handled, that the clause was clear, that there would be no negotiation, no discussion, no emotional appeals. She tried anyway. She said she'd made a mistake, that she didn't want to lose everything, that we could go to therapy, that she'd cut him off, that she'd do anything. I listened, the whole time. Then I said, you already did anything. That was when she broke. She reached for my hand. I moved it away, not violently, just enough. I kept my side of the agreement, I said. I honored what we built. You didn't. This isn't anger. This is consequence. She asked if I hated her. I told her no. That hurt her more. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. She sent voice messages, long ones. Rambling. Defensive. Some angry. Some desperate. I didn't listen to a single one. I archived them without opening. Words lose power when you stop receiving them. She tried showing up unannounced once. I didn't open the door. She tried texting apologies. I didn't reply. Silence did the work for me. 3 days later, the fallout began without my involvement. A mutual friend called, confused, asking why Lauren was suddenly saying we were on a break. Another texted asking if I was okay. Apparently, Lauren had been trying to control the narrative, insisting nothing had really happened. She forgot one thing. The house had security cameras. We installed them after a break-in years ago. Motion activated. Automatic cloud storage. She never asked if they were still active. She assumed. They were. I didn't send the footage to anyone. I didn't have to. Someone else noticed the alert history and the timestamps. Someone else connected dots. And suddenly, *TS existed. The video of her kissing him in our kitchen surfaced in a group chat I wasn't even part of. I heard about it secondhand. How people went quiet. How messages stopped. How excuses fell apart in real time. Within 48 hours, her name disappeared from her company's website. Personal reasons, they said. Friends unfollowed her. Colleagues distanced themselves. Even her sister stopped answering her calls. Not because anyone canceled her. Because the truth arrived before she could rewrite it. She called me once more. Not crying. Not apologizing. Just asking how things had fallen apart so fast. I didn't answer. Some things explain themselves. People think betrayal is the worst part. The discovery. The moment everything falls apart. And it's bad, no doubt. But what came after? That was something else. It was watching the person who thought she could walk through fire without getting burned finally feel the heat. Lauren had always been composed. That was her thing. Grace under pressure. She could walk into any room and make people lower their voices and raise their respect. She knew how to dress, how to speak, how to control a narrative. But you can only control a story when you're the one writing it, not when the pages start writing themselves. She underestimated how fast things would unravel. I didn't post anything. I never so much as hinted online that something had happened. But I didn't have to. People talked. *TS circulated. Word got around. The footage from the kitchen camera, that was the tipping point. A friend of mine who knew about the break-in years ago must have remembered we had a system. And after the story of the affair started to leak, someone asked the question, "Do you still have cameras?" I didn't respond to that either. Didn't need to. The file had been sitting untouched in my cloud backup for over a year. Timestamped. Clear. And when it started making the rounds in our circle, it wasn't me who sent it. It was someone who felt just as betrayed by her lie as I did. She forgot the camera existed. Forgot that when she leaned across the kitchen counter and kissed him like she lived in a different life, it was all caught in the top right frame. It spread fast. Group chats lit up. Instagram went silent. Friends we'd had for years stopped reacting to her stories. Some blocked her altogether. A couple even reached out to me, quietly apologizing for not seeing the signs. One of our oldest friends, Megan, texted me a single sentence. "I don't know who she is anymore." Lauren wasn't ready for that kind of silence. She tried damage control, claimed it was just a misunderstanding, said we'd been separated, said she hadn't meant to hurt anyone, but no one was buying it. The damage was done. And for the first time in her life, Lauren didn't know how to spin it. Her work took a hit next. She'd been climbing the ladder at her firm for the past 3 years. Marketing executive. The kind of job where image matters almost as much as performance. Her photo used to be right on the homepage. Smiling, arms crossed, confident. One day it was gone. No announcement. No explanation. Just deleted. Someone sent me a **T. I didn't feel victorious. Just finished. Her sister was next. They'd always been close. Not inseparable, but more than friendly. Shared childhood stories, inside jokes. One weekend a year, they'd go hiking, just the two of them. But after the fallout, I got a message from her sister out of nowhere. It was short. "I had no idea. I'm sorry, Cullen. Really sorry. I'm not speaking to her right now." That hit harder than I expected. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I realized how much her own actions had isolated her. Lauren had built a life on connection, and now those connections were unraveling by the hour. And yet, she still thought she had leverage. I knew because of the house. That was her soft spot, her project, as she called it. We'd bought it together 4 years ago, but she'd chosen the paint, the tiles, the fixtures. She used to say it was the one place that made her feel like she was building something permanent. I stayed out of most of it. Let her make it her own. I didn't care about the backsplash or the light fixtures. I just wanted her to feel at home. After she moved out, she tried to negotiate. First, through a text. "Maybe we can talk about me keeping part of the equity? I know we both invested in it, but I think we can be fair." I didn't answer. Then came the email. Formal, careful wording. Her lawyer had reached out to mine asking if there was room for a partial asset division regarding the shared residence. What they didn't know was that she had already signed away her claim. Buried in the fine print, the very contract she'd laughed at during our anniversary trip, was a clause that stated infidelity nullified her rights to claim property value beyond her original share. And her original share? 0. I'd bought the house with money from my father's inheritance before we got married. She had added design touches, yes, but no capital, no equity, no contribution to the down payment. She signed the clause, smiling across a plate of oysters, sipping champagne, saying, "If it makes you feel better, sure, but we're never going to need it." We did. 2 weeks later, I put the house up for sale. It was time. But before I listed it publicly, I added a little touch. A sign out front. White background. Clean lettering, nothing flashy. Just one line. Buyer must value honesty. It stayed up for 2 days before the listing went live. She saw it. I know she did because she drove by. A neighbor texted me that she had stopped across the street, parked for a few minutes, stared, then drove off without getting out of the car. That was the last time I saw her face to face. I ended up selling the house to a couple in their 50s. Quiet, kind, no performance, no pretense. They didn't care about open concept layouts or farmhouse sinks. They cared that it felt solid, safe. Lauren didn't contest the sale. Maybe she realized it was already over. Or maybe she was just too busy trying to patch up her image elsewhere. I didn't follow her online. Didn't look up what she was posting. I didn't want to know how she was trying to frame the story. That was her world. The filters, the curated captions, the vague statements about growth and healing. I didn't need to be part of it anymore. My story was real. It was quiet, steady, legal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw her things out the window. I didn't call her names. I didn't burn photos or smash plates or demand apologies she couldn't give. I just moved on, paper by paper, clause by clause, step by step. The fall wasn't public because I made it that way, but it still happened, and no amount of spin could change the landing. She used to call it her sanctuary. Now it belonged to someone else. The rooms she obsessed over, the kitchen she curated down to the drawer handles, all gone. I didn't even flinch signing the final papers. The new owners didn't care about the style. They cared that it was peaceful, that it had no ghosts. She came by once. Not to talk, just to pick up something she'd forgotten. Parked across the street. Saw the sign I left by the lawn. Buyer must value honesty. She sat in her car for a minute, then drove off. That was it. No dramatic scene. No final plea. Just a silent acknowledgement that what she'd built on lies couldn't last. She thought she could leave a mark on the place. But the only thing she left behind was a door I never locked again. 1 month later, I held a gallery showing, black and white photography, quiet portraits of empty streets, forgotten spaces. She came. No makeup, no performance. Just a hollow version of who she'd once been. She said sorry, but not for cheating, for what she ruined. I handed her a photo from our last trip, except she'd been cropped out. Only I remained, standing alone, looking forward. Later, she sent a box. Inside, our rings and a note. I kept my vows. You only masks. I didn't reply. Some goodbyes don't come in screaming matches. Some come in silence, in paperwork, in cropped photographs. And sometimes that silence says more than 1,000 apologies ever could.